just to say it's going to start again in a couple of minutes after. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Hey, everybody. I just want to explain something really quickly. You'll see this screen up here. This is just to help the conference organizers capture what people are thinking and keep the conversation going. So I'll just explain it one more time really quickly. You go on your phone, go to menti.com, and then you'll get prompted to put a code in, and 82744 is the code. And then you can submit as many responses as you want and just keep adding to this conversation. So that'll just be, even when it's off the screen, you can still submit to it. It'll just be popping up during break time. So feel free to add to that, and that's going to help capture what people are thinking through the whole day. And I think we're going to get started in just a minute. Thanks.
So good afternoon. Thanks for sticking with us. I think you'll agree it was a pretty interesting and provocative morning, and the afternoon holds no less interesting things to sink your teeth into. So before we kick off the placemaking panel, I just wanted to share two thoughts with you. My name's Jennifer Angel. I'm with Develop Nova Scotia, and I'm really delighted to acknowledge my colleagues, my fellow organizers of this Art of City Building conference, who worked very, very hard behind the scenes on this project and many other projects to build this city. So Karash Rad, Paul McKinnon, Tara Wickwire, and my colleague at Develop Nova Scotia, TJ McGuire, I just wanted to give them a round of applause because a lot of this work is volunteer work, and they truly believe. There he is. And they truly believe in the potential of this place, and they're working hard to raise our expectations of what Halifax and Nova Scotia can be. But this is not an exclusive group, and that is a really important point in all of this, and you'll see this threaded through the conversation this afternoon as well. And it brings me to the second point I really want to emphasize. We are all city builders, and this stuff matters. Place matters, and it's about more than roads and parks and buildings. The Shoreside Foundation talks about place in a very compelling way, I think, and I just want to read you something from them. Place is fundamental to our humanity. Place holds the relationships we have with ourselves, with one another, and with our natural and built environments. The sum of these relationships gives us a sense of belonging. Place is specific. Place holds the space for people to create and express an individual identity. Place gives us a shared global fate because all places are interconnected. Advancing our universal interests while nurturing the specificity of each place will contribute to our shared well-being. So we believe in the power of place, and we believe that we are all placemakers. Last night, Mary Rowe reminded us of Jane Jacobs' observation that a city can be a place for everybody only when and only if it is created by everybody. When we build the city together and everyone participates in the making of the place, not only will we build more authentic and inclusive and sustainable places that are magnetic to people, but the most important thing that we build is community. And so now I'm pleased to introduce one of my favorite placemakers and man about town, my colleague at Develop Nova Scotia, TJ McGuire.
It's happening. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm going to pull the mic up a bit. I'm a little taller. Yeah, very, very excited for this session in particular. Really excited for Pam to be here, Lucy and Frith, and of course Fred and Ramon. And I think we may have one more. But anyway, it's been a long few weeks. This session in particular, just I want to reconcile a bit that I have two Cree brothers that I haven't connected with in probably 20 years. I talk to them every now and then, but I'm going to try to do that very soon. So this is, very important to me, and I think with Pam being here from the Mi'kmaq Friendship Center, being the only visible piece of Mi'kmaq culture that people can identify with in our city, I think we have a fair amount of work to do. So hopefully this is a bit more energy for that conversation. So Pam, who's the Executive Director of the Mi'kmaq Friendship Center, I'd love for you to come up.
I'm not nearly as tall, even with my platforms on, not quite there. So first of all, I want to thank everybody for having me here today. And behind, we're going to show some of our new renderings of our new building for the new Friendship Center. And we're pretty proud. The first piece that I really want to touch on when we start talking about the building is that it's not just bricks and mortar. Many people will see it as bricks and mortar, and I understand that. To my community, and hopefully the broader community, it will become a living, breathing opportunity for true engagement. A real opportunity for us to sit down and have conversations. Some of them will be tough, but the reality is we need to have tough conversations in order to move forward. That building means so much more than just the bricks and mortar. It is a sign and a signal to the Indigenous community here in HRM, the Mi'kmaq community in particular, of being visible, being recognized, and having the opportunity for us to build capacity, becoming self-determinant, and allowing us to build true relationships with our non-Indigenous community. Most people who know the Friendship Center recognize that we are much more than just social services. We provide employment to over 100 people. We last year serviced over 5,500 Indigenous people for many different things, and it's not just addiction services. Some of this is just cultural opportunity for us to get together and celebrate. We talk about the stigma that is quite often attached to our communities, and this building is going to blow that apart. It's going to give us the real opportunity to have ongoing conversation and us becoming self-determinant in what we do. We talk about infrastructure, and I know that there's a lot of conversations around here. The important piece of that new building is that it's going to support not just my own community, but the broader community. I want to be the next member too, by the way. I want our Friendship Center to be the next member too. Every cent that comes in through our programming, which this year is over $7 million, is spent in HRM. We employ people living and working in HRM, so we are not a drain on society as quite often we're looked at. The real opportunities is much larger than the dollar. It is about us coming together and supporting each other in ways that we've never been able to do. I want that building not just to belong to the Friendship Center and my community, but I want it to belong to every single person living in HRM. I want you all to feel welcomed to come into that building and learn the history of our communities, build long-term relationships. The reality is most of you probably have an Indigenous person living next to you somewhere, and you may not even know it. And yet, we're hidden. So we want to pull ourselves up. We want to put us front and center, and let's be honest, I think the location that we've chosen is pretty iconic. You know, with Citadel Hill right there, and the Friendship Center standing there next to it. So we want to find a better way to do things. We talk about land ownership. I got to tell you, land ownership is really it's an imaginary line. It's not real. We all own land with this is mine, this is yours. At the end of the day, it's not yours. We actually belong to the land. We're all going back there. You're not taking your little parcel of land with you. So we have to reimagine how we think about land. We have to reimagine how we look at land. How do we all become stewardships of the land? How do we share the ownership? How do we make sure that my community has a safe place to be? Most of you who do know the Friendship Center currently, they'll go, oh, that building with the paintings on the outside. You know, that's how people know the Friendship Center. We're changing that. We're making changes. But the support of the non-Indigenous community is actually key in how we move forward. I want people to feel engaged. I want people to know that this is so much more than the bricks and mortar. It's about reconciliation at its best. It's not a tick box. It's true reconciliation. And so far, I've got to tell you, the team that has come together and helped support this, if somebody had told me 10 years ago that we'd have the people sitting around the table, I would have said, no way, not going to happen. And that's changing. We have a much stronger, I would say, mayor and council, and I'm so thankful for them. They've taken a leap of faith with us. And it is a leap of faith, I get that. But we can't change anything unless we do that, and we push the limits, and we push how we do business. We need to be able to work together and recognize that if my community's winning, everybody's winning. My community is a small portion of HRM. We're over 20,000 people in HRM, growing dramatically, by the way, and yet you don't see us anywheres. You're starting to see little signs, a few words here and there, but the economic development opportunities that go hand in hand with the infrastructure that's required for the Friendship Center, that's win-win for everybody. There are tourism opportunities that we're missing hand over hand, and it's just in a sieve, and we're losing it all. And my community wants to celebrate and bring ourselves forward, but I'm here to tell you, we need your support to do that. I want friendship. Kind of funny that we're talking about the Friendship Center, but I want real friendship. I want somebody who's going to walk with me, not in front of me, not behind me, not beside me, or on top of me or below me. Somebody who's going to walk right with me. And that's how we make changes. We start having some of the tough conversations, land ownership. I really do believe we have to start looking at how we do that, and what is land, and how do we share land, and how do we make sure that we're looking after the land. And it's not just my own community's responsibility to do that, by the way, it's all of ours. We all have to start looking at how we're doing business, and how are we making sure that we're doing things together, not at each other, because that's the worst thing to do. That divides and conquers. So the reality is we're asking you guys, it's election, by the way, anybody notice? Get out and bug everybody and tell everybody who's running, what's your stance on the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center? What's your stance on Indigenous opportunities in HRM? Because I got to tell you, we're missing a whole lot. And we're missing huge, huge opportunities. We want to be able to celebrate. And that Friendship Center is a great way to do that. But the reality is, I know the impact that a Friendship Center has on my own community, but I also know the impact that it has on the broader community. And it's often not talked about. We're a real opportunity to come in, feel safe and secure, and have a conversation with us. We've been doing reconciliation, by the way. That's just a new buzzword for us, by the way. You look at UNDRIP, you look at all of those pieces of work that's been done. We need to start doing things differently. We all know what the issues are. I know the barriers really well of what my community is often faced with, but I also know there's a lot of barriers on the other end. People are scared to walk in, they're scared to ask questions, they're scared to offend somebody. And those are barriers. Those are barriers just on the other side. So having the opportunity to really be able to bring people through that building, have an education piece on the side around the Mi'kmaq people here in Nova Scotia, but also having real spaces to have real dialogue for us, to be comfortable, safe, secure. That's the reality. That's all we ever really wanted. I'm off to Ottawa next week to have a conversation in Ottawa on the new Friendship Center and trying to keep the momentum going. Been having ongoing conversations with the McConnell Foundation, and they're really interested and want to support this project now because it is different, and it is taking a leap of faith for everybody. Looking at everything from the opportunities that can come with that, but also looking at how do we do it together? I can't do it alone. That's the reality. I won't lie. I'm getting tired of the fight. But I'm not going anywhere until I know it's done. And somebody said to me the other day, why do you feel like it's a fight? Well, because it's always 2 steps forward and 10 back. I just think we've gained a piece and then something else has gone sideways. And the reality of how we do that, how we've been able to correct some of that is because I'm not doing it alone anymore. I actually have some really key, solid people who are pushing with us and working with us. HRM Council, you know, John Lindsay, who volunteering time and time again, God love him, you know, Group ATN, and like there's just been so many people that have come to the table. And we can't do it alone. I've tried doing it alone. We've been trying to get a new friendship center now for 20 years, actually closer to 25. So the reality is, I need you guys to work with us, help us, support us, have an opportunity, come talk to me, come visit the Friendship Center. That's really what that center is about. We want people to be welcoming and feel comfortable coming in and looking at how we can move forward together and not hiding our Indigenous community that's here. Because right now, you know, it's like when I go to BC and every place else, it's like, holy, I know where I am. I know which territory I am in. But you don't know that here. There's a few pictures, there's a few little this and little words here, but you don't know whose territory this is. And in order to move forward, we all have to understand where we are now, where we were, and where do we want to go. We have a real opportunity to actually show people how we can do this. It has to be community driven, and not just from my own community, by the way. You know, we spent a lot of time with elders and so many people. And we even went to non-Indigenous community members saying, what do you want to see in a new Friendship Center? Because we have lots of people who rent from us and who just come in and borrow chairs and tables and whatever they need. So we want to really make sure that everybody feels that that center is something very different. And we're really hoping that as the momentum comes and it starts to build with this center, that we have everybody standing there with us, because that's ultimately what it's about. It's not about just one person or just one community for that matter. It's about everybody and how we see the development of the urban context here, but also Nova Scotia in general. We need to start celebrating our community members that are here, recognizing our history and where we come from and how do we want to move forward. So that's it. Thank you so much.
So who's ready to help Pam? Yeah. Excellent. All right, so we're very lucky today to have Lucy Takua here. She is from Tamaki Makaru. She'll explain it. Yeah, which you may know is it's New Zealand. We're connected to her through Ethan, Kent, and Lucy, and Frith. Sorry, all the names are coming together. Lucy is instrumental in supporting the protection of cultural heritage and advocating identity through storytelling of place. She has been serving her people for many years in both tribal governance and operations. With a passion for design, her core work is to support the Maori to see their faces in their places. She acts as a conduit between government and local bodies and private developers in their engagement with Maori, and in particular those iwi tribal authorities in Tamaki Makaru. Okay. Sorry.
Thank you.
You know, time stands still when you're having fun, eh? Don't start the clock. Tēnā tātou katoa, tuatahi mihi tēnei ki tō tātou kaihanga i o matua. Kia rangi nui, kia papatua nuku me a rāua uri, ngā hua, ngā tini, ngā uri a te hau. Mihi atu ki a rātou, ngā tūpuna mātua kua mene atu ki te pō. Ki te tangata whenua ko Mingma, te ahi kā tēnā koutou. Kia koe e Deb nau te karakia i te ata nei. Te kōrero hononga whānau, hononga ki ngā kia papatuanuku tēnā koe. I acknowledge Io Matua, our Supreme Being, Rangi Nui, Sky Father, Papatuanuku, Earth Mother, and their descendants, the plants, the four-leggeds, the winged and non-winged, all those that are part of our creation story. I pay my respects to our ancestors, to all our ancestors, and bid them farewell. To the Mi'kmaq people of this land, those that keep the sacred fires burning, I greet you. To Deb, who opened our gathering in a very profound and deeply appropriate way, highlighting the importance of family and a familial connection to place and in turn to each other. Pai mārire. So I encourage you to sit back and enjoy the storying. I'm not going to tire your eyes with heaps of slides. We only have one slide. I am not here to present. I am here to share my stories. Te kawa o wai tui tui. This is a tikanga or a protocol that I bring with me today, presenced here by the elements of our natural environment. The children of Rangi Nui, Sky Father, and Papatuanuku, Earth Mother, it is an analogy of the practice and protocol of weaving waters. I presence here this hewn burl of the box elder and the shavings from the walnut, the cherry, and red oak grandfathers that now imbue the ha, the breath of the carver as he carved this water carrier gifted to me only yesterday. I bring my pounamu. Her name is Kawakawa. She is an important and highly prized possession of Māori, found only in the west coast of Te Waka a Maui, the South Island and the Hokitika River, to hononga, to greet and connect with these taonga, these ancestors of your lands. The Māori of the waters of the Atlantic, the life force and vitality bears witness to the conversations that we are about to have. The stone gifted to me just a couple of evenings ago by a traditional elder who I experienced the ceremony of prepping the water drum. The water drum for our sweat lodge. I share with you and invite you to feel the essence of place of Aotearoa through this pounamu. And in doing so, I invite you to also think of a water body that strongly resonates with you wherever you may be or wherever in the world that may be. You could ask for a ticket to Aotearoa, New Zealand. Waiora, water is life. Mani wichoni, water is life. This picture here represents the sacred hoop. White, yellow, red and black, once broken, now calls for a time of healing. The white buffalo calf woman prophesies that there would come a time when a white buffalo calf would stand on the earth and all the white spirit animals would signal this time for healing by sacred prayer to influence a shift in energy. In 2008, my close friend created this representation of World Peace and Prayer Day, honouring sacred sites. Led by Chief Arvel Looking Horse, 19th generation keeper of the sacred white buffalo calf pipe, the leader of the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota, Oyate, the Great Sioux Nation. As the host nation, we acknowledge the sacred four directions, as you can see there, which we refer to as Ngā Haue Whā, the four winds. An international gathering now spanning over 20 years. The proverb, all nations, all faiths, one prayer, was further aligned with the Aior meaning of peace, for which we have deep cultural traditions. The star cluster of Pleiades, or Matariki, as we know her, is also identified. Our sacred creation origins are bound by the kawakawa, or protocols of aroha, of love. There is a shift that is manifesting in a strong, strong desire to return to the traditional ways in order to protect Mother Earth. We heard this in the welcome and in the prayers offered by Deb this morning, an important way in which to open and hold such an important space and gatherings that have the opportunity to bring positive change. We, here today, have that ability to embody this narrative in what we practice and do, partnering with place, culture and communities is a sacred covenant. Ko au te whenua, ko te whenua ko au. I am the land, and the land is me. I am not here as a presenter, but a messenger, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my story. As my brother said, I have been serving my people for many years. I don't come with any academic qualifications or alphabet soup after my name, and therefore disciplines. I am undisciplined. I come with the calluses on these hands, an open heart, and a dose of humility and humour. Ko wai au. I am a child of Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland, Aotearoa. Tāmaki of 100 lovers. But now there are 1.5 million lovers. My sacred mountain, Kohu Kohu Nui, the great mist-covered mountain, the highest in the Auckland region, bows to greet your mountains. My sacred waterways and tributaries, harbours and oceans, they flow to meet yours. These are the Māori markers, markers of life force and vitality for my people within our territory. The long-held DNA markers within the landscape that connect me to place. He uri tēnei nō Waikato Tainui, pare hauraki, Ngāti Pāwa, Ngāti Whanaunga, pare Waikato, Ngāti Tahinga. He Māori ahau, I am Māori. Beauty is in the language. My language is my superpower, yeah. Whenua is our word for land, and it also refers to the placenta that intrinsically ties our whakapapa, our genealogy, to Mother Earth. When our children are born, their whenua, their placenta, is returned to be buried on the lands of their ancestors, to be physically and spiritually forever connected to place. To re-image the art of city building is to bring forward those cultural narratives of this place, the artifacts before city building, the opportunity to bring these forward, those traditional names that hold the stories of Indigenous peoples through intent and partnering. We can do this, changing those narratives to acquire a deeper sense of place. What are those Indigenous names that are visible in your cities? What is the meaning of those, and how do we bring those to life through activations? Let's narrate and make sense of that. How? Through building trusting and respectful relationships that with the tangata whenua, the people of the land of our cities, so that they have the opportunity to share their deep cultural expression as storytellers of stories that only they can tell and manifest in the built form. It is important to provide for our mokopuna, moko, reflection, puna, spring, to see our reflections in the spring. That is the word or the name that we call our grandchildren. To see my reflection in my grandson. Mokopuna, our grandchildren born and yet to be born, to have the ability to see their faces in their places. To be proud of their heritage as they grow to become parents, teachers, leaders, and one day great ancestors, that they have been able to leave their moccasin prints on the land for their descendants to follow. I acknowledge the work that Carolyn King has done through the Moccasin Project in Toronto, and I learnt about that only this week at a week-long Indigenous placemaking retreat on Toronto Island, where I just flew in last night, 12:30 this morning. There are leading examples of how this can be done. Activations shared during this time were simple celebrations, including important events, times when significant fruits of the land, flourishings, including summer and winter solstice, specific cultural events relating to place and First Nations. Providing for cultural expression need not be hard, people. As a founding member of Ngā Aho, an international collective of Indigenous creatives, architects, landscape architects, urban planners, weavers, carvers, there is a groundswell of notable Indigenous practitioners doing great work in the built environment. We are the group that partnered with the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nations on Toronto Island that culminated in a symposium on Friday. A very deeply moving and spiritually uplifting event to nourish and nurture through storytelling and sharing that journey through panel presentations, dialogue, and art via studio presentations. There'll be a link on my bio once I get the link. So what does making shifts look like? Essentially, in order to daylight streams, we have to first daylight minds. In order to dechannelize streams, any engineers in the room? No, we're not picking on engineers. In order to dechannelize streams, we have to change the channel. As Indigenous peoples, we do not make place, place makes us. And I support Pam's kōrero, walk with us. So, having shared kawakawa around the room, I would like to invite just a couple of people to share with us what their special place is. That place where you draw your strength and energy and vitality from, even though it may not be beside you. It might be halfway around the world, like me. My water body is the Waikato River. Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
It's the ocean and they've hidden spots around Halifax.
Beautiful. Thank you. Anybody else want to share? Thank you.
A very tiny island in the middle of, near the coast of Connecticut in the United States.
Okay, so where's Connecticut? That way? Oh, down. Northeast. Oh, northeast of the US. Thank you. No, that's fine, thank you. So usually when I do that exercise, man, we go on really awesome journeys around the world. People talk about water bodies that I've never heard of, like, you know, they talk about a channel, a fiord, because it doesn't necessarily need to be a flowing water. But also acknowledging that we ourselves are water bodies and that we need to take care of the waters of this planet. In closing, I would like to share a waiata, a song with you all, one that you can participate in, actually. Participation is always a good thing, eh? It calls for you to bring your pūmanawa, your heartbeat, through the drum, and I will be your voice. It is a song written for sister organisations, Ambassadors for Indian Opportunities, led by LaDonna Harris, and Amo, Ambassadors for Māori Opportunities, led by Kate and Bentham Ohia, that supports the development of Indigenous leaders. It sings to the values of relationships, respect, reciprocity, redistribution, and love that we each need to uphold. In allowing the voice of the place and what she is calling for, and the voice of the First Peoples who have a long, endearing relationship with that place, so that we can commune in harmony in and for the benefit of Earth Mother and Sky Father. Right, get your drum on, people. So you can't tap on the table, so let's just go. You're speeding up, eh? Who's a good timekeeper in the room? Anyway. Ko rangi ayo, ko papayo, ngā pau hei amo, mo te whanau ngā tanga, kawe ngā taututu, ko ha takuru atu, te aroha te whariki. Yehu, yehu, ye ayo, yehu, yehu, ye amo. Ko rangi ayo, ko papa ayo, ngā pau hei amo, mo te whanau ngā tanga, kawe ngā taututu, ko ha takuru atu, te aroha te whariki. Yehu, yehu, ye ayo, yehu, yehu, ye amo. Tuturu kia o whiti whakamaua kia tīna, tīna. Haumie huie tai ki e. I was 2.5 minutes early. No, I won't sing another song.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Just makes me wonder what else we're missing out on by not having more of these conversations. So, yeah. The next speaker I would like to introduce is Frith Walker. I believe I referred to her yesterday as my sister from another mister, but a number of people have told us we had to meet, and because we have very similar jobs, my job in Halifax, and she works as the manager of placemaking in Auckland for Panuku Development. Frith Walker has worked in the field of placemaking for Auckland Council, beginning in the redevelopment of the city centre, waterfront, and for Waterfront Auckland, and is now into the wider region of Panuku. As manager of placemaking, they have a different approach down there. Panuku Development, Auckland, Frith works on the creation of successful public space networks while supporting and programming activation of Auckland's public spaces. Frith champions the difference a healthy public realm can make and in terms of creating livable cities. So, thank you. Yeah, come on up. Thank you. Oh, and this might have to come down.
Yeah, thanks so much, TJ. That's great. Tēnā koutou katoa. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge Lucy. I literally and figuratively would not be here without Lucy Tukua, so kia ora, Lucy. Also, thank you very much, Halifax and Chubuktuk, if I've got that right, for having us here, for bringing us all the way from New Zealand. And most importantly, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on traditional and unceded Mi'kmaq territory, and I'd like to sincerely thank them for welcoming us to this place. I'm very grateful to be on this land. I'm not starting with a pepeha, which is what Lucy spoke of in her speech. The thing that you would do welcoming yourself to a place in New Zealand is start by naming the thing you are from. Refer to your awa, your water, your maunga, your mountain. As a fourth generation New Zealander, it's very hard for me to do that. I'm several boats and hundreds and thousands of years away from knowing where I'm really from. So I speak to you as a Pākehā New Zealander, somebody who kind of belongs there, but sort of not really at the same time. So I come from Auckland. The North Island is where Auckland is, the South Island below that, and you'll see our West Island, Australia, just off to the side there. And this is, if I'm going to think about my water, it's the Waitemata Harbour. This is the view from Takapuna Beach out to Rangitoto, which is we have a lot of volcanoes in Auckland, a sort of a strange amount of volcanoes with a city with humans living in it. And right down the barrel between Rangitoto and the next island that you can see is Pakihi Island. So a couple of hundred years ago, or just under, my family arrived because of the clearances in Scotland and purchased land that traditionally belonged to Lucy's family. So, again, very grateful to Lucy for giving me a home as well as a job. I'll talk a little bit about myself, as Tim said. People like doing that, so I'm going to take that opportunity. I come from a theatre background. I was originally sitting next to those guys telling them what to do, so I was a stage manager. This image is from the Louis Vuitton 150th birthday party tour when Kelly Rowland didn't turn up to rehearsals. So for 3.5 minutes, I had to be Kelly Rowland. And so the lessons I learnt in that time are really applicable to placemaking in my mind. First and foremost, you're delivering to an opening night. Opening night does not move, and no matter what, you have to get the show up. Secondly, and most importantly, some people are very good at their jobs, and they should do that job. And I was a very good stage manager, but I shouldn't be allowed dancing on stage. And so these are two of the most patient men I've ever met in my life. It was a great lesson in humility, but an excellent lesson in how making a show takes a diverse range of people to put it together. I want to make a joke about theatre and budgets being small. I shouldn't make that with Louis Vuitton. That was not the case at that time. And as TJ said, our organisation, Panuku Development Auckland, is frighteningly similar to Develop Nova Scotia. This is our strapline, shaping spaces for Aucklanders to love. So Ethan has said that we're the only development agency he's seen with that L word in our vision, which is pretty special. But for me, in my role as manager of placemaking, 2 words, yes, we had fights over that, this is the most important word that I work for. Our name, Pānuku, was gifted to us by mana whenua, local iwi, and it's a very powerful word. So Pānuku by itself means to move forward together. It brings up the notion of paddling a waka, which is what you can see here. They're very big craft. They don't have a lot of freeboard. They're really easy to sink. If you work together, they will go forward, and they're incredibly powerful. Put into this phrase, eke pānuku, eke tangaroa, you hear this in blessings. It summons up the powers of the earth, the powers of the ocean, to help make that movement, that forward momentum even stronger, even more connected, even more powerful. So it's a big gift that we have to have that in our name, but it's also an awesome responsibility for our city. We work across the region like Develop Nova Scotia. We are now operating in more than one location, and so the big red dots are what we call transform locations. That means we're there for a long time, doing a lot of change. The little green dots might be on one site, so smaller interventions, and then the blue dots are somewhere in between. But that's kind of the reach of our work across the Auckland region. Poor old Pukekohe's off the map there. Sorry, Pukekohe. Nothing personal there. But the reason that we got jobs is because they figured out that if they were going to spend $124 million on Auckland's waterfront, they better make it good for people. So that's why me and my colleague, a chap called Chris Morley Hall, were hired. So we're back into Auckland here. This is the Waitemata Harbour that you can see. And if you keep your eye under the CKLA bit, that's the Wynyard Quarter. It was said yesterday that any good urban redevelopment needs a vision. We had a vision from the very, very start, a world-class destination that excites the senses and celebrates our sea-loving Pacific culture and maritime history. It supports commercially successful and innovative businesses and is a place for all people, an area rich in character and activities that link the people to the city and the sea. That's nice. Can you see Lucy anywhere in that? So we started this venture with this waterfront and did a really good job, and it's working really well. But there's another conversation that we need to be working harder to get right. This is the Wynyard Quarter a while ago. So we've got Team New Zealand, ironically, right down the barrel there. They're back again. Got an America's Cup next year. Woohoo! Jokes. Anyway, good. Moving on. Really, really important fishing industry area, really important bulk storage terminal area, really important ferry connections through to places like Great Barrier. So a really heavily essential part of the industry of our city, but our city couldn't connect to its water. You weren't allowed to touch the water. So the cities owned big chunks of this and developed the Waterfront Redevelopment Agency, and we turned it into this. So starting with public space first and foremost, because if you get the people there, then the development will come. If you make it a place people love, then people will want to invest there. The best way to get people to invest, I've got a special pointy thing, I do put it, this is food. This is all food, because that brings humans together like nothing else on earth. And then down here is Silo Park, which I'll talk about in a second. But this big pedestrian promenade was put in on the very basic understanding that we as humans like to walk next to the water. We like to promenade and we like to see other humans. All quite basic stuff. This drawing was one of the few instructions I was given at the very beginning. It was about energy. So for a theatre maker, that was a really easy instruction to follow. But it was about how as you move through the space, the energy builds and your connection with the space builds. And Stuart Niven was one of our early urban design champions and advocates and advisors. So he taught me a lot about this stuff in the very beginning. This idea that we were making a place that people had to come and feel something for was ingrained into our whole team from the very start. Should pay attention to the time, eh? This is from a very early document about 2008, and it's from the framework plan at the time, but the big red lines are what I want you to look at. The place was designed thinking about how humans move through space. So view shafts were put in, the big east-west axis, the green linear park running north-south. Silo Park looks a little underwater in this drawing, so I'm very glad they changed their minds on that one. But these big instructions still hold in terms of how we operate the space today. There's 4 ways that we think about it. Place by design being the most permanent-ish. So this is a basketball court in the middle of the Wynyard Quarter. It's actually a development site, so at some point this could turn into mixed use. But in the meantime, we noticed that there were a lot of apartments with students in it with no outdoor space to play. So we put in a temporary half court, and it's used all the time, day and night, from people all over Auckland. Just next to it, you can see a little playground off to the side. So this is a really interesting space where people about that big have to negotiate with people about TJ's size. and it all works. Second thing is the kind of big ticket item, what we do in Silo Park, making things like Silo Cinema to make sure there's regular programming to draw people to that space. This is probably the stuff we like the most, the stuff where you're kind of messing with people's heads. So painted pianos, you have them, Halifax. This photo looks really cute, it doesn't sound cute at all, but the opportunity for people to just have a creative intervention in space on their own terms. And then this idea, we call it Do Learn Do down in New Zealand because we like our number 8 wire, same as lighter, quicker, cheaper. The idea that before we make any big plans, we do some small things first and we see if they work. This container library costs $60. It's been there for 7 years, and no, I don't have a resource consent for it. Shh. And so this is Silo Park, and there's cars in this shot. I just realised that as Tim was talking. Damn it. Anyway, we love you, cars. You're still welcome in our city. But anyway, so this is kind of a really neat place because of those silos. So we've kept a lot of the infrastructure of the place to pay homage, but also to use it as new forms of intervention and new forms of attraction. So we do art in Silo 6 over on the right there, and we screen movies onto Silo 7. And the place has got something like, I think it's 80,000 Facebook followers now. That's a crazy amount in my mind, scares me. We have about 2 million visitors to the waterfront, which is sort of just over double the amount of humans or sheep in Auckland. So it's working. And then, as I said last night, my connection to this place is quite deep. This is my grandfather in the short sleeves. He was a harbour board engineer, and he built this model of the Waitemata before they started doing the big wharves to test whether or not those wharves were going to interfere with the water movements. And so I have this sort of bifold metaphor for this image. Number one, this is what placemaking is. It's testing stuff on a little scale to see if it works or if it damages things. And number two, my grandfather actually helped build this place. The little wharf off to his left is McCallum's Wharf, which is my grandmother's family, and my father was very involved in keeping the marine industry in the Wynyard Quarter. So my connection to this place is kind of in my ancestral responsibility, if you like. I need to make sure I'm making my grandfather proud in my job. But to bounce you around Auckland a little bit, I think we're going to go to Northcote next. So that's the little blue dot above the waterfront, just off to the left. We're doing a greenway project in Northcote, and we're taking a regenerative approach, which Lucy touched on. So we're daylighting a stream which for a very long time has been underground, except when it floods. When it floods through the houses of the social housing area that hasn't had any maintenance for 10 years, which causes great health problems in small children. So there's a system not working right there. So we're taking this thing back to what it was probably supposed to be when Mother Earth designed it for us. And this idea that as we connect people to place and reconnect them with nature, we start to regenerate some relationships that are really, really fundamental to us living here on this planet. This image is actually from down south in Manukau. Pretty cute. These are kids' quotes. Anybody who says that anything's yuck, you probably need to help that place. So we're going to bounce down now. This is Manukau, so red dot right down the bottom. Wow, I mean, amazing public space. Winner of 2 design awards, ladies and gentlemen. The thing in the middle is public art. Spot the public art, I'll give you a prize. Really interesting place, always with about that many people in it a few years ago, so that's brilliant. So this is where we've started working. Manukau is a transform location, so we're going to be there for a long time. So we're working with locals on how we activate this place. And this is my dear colleague Ole Maava, Fa'a Ole Maava, sorry. He's our leader for placemaking in the south. So he's gone in and thinks on these levels. How do we find local knowledge? How do we build empathy? The trust that is lacking in our city is amazing. How many relationships are broken over years of bad things being done or things not being done? And then you've said storytelling today a lot, but it's just fundamental to how we're wired as humans, and how do those stories inform what this place is going to look like in the future? How do we get locals knowing that they can have a hand in making their city? Transformation with a little t is a gag at our end. We know what big looks like in Manukau. We've got lots of big buildings. The cityscape where you walk is terribly car dependent and scary, so we're starting from the ground up. And then the do, learn, do idea. How do we get all the incredibly clever young people of this area involved in making a place that maybe previously they'd been shut out of? So this is, I'm going to get it wrong, markets, I'll just say markets because that's a language I know, that they've been staging in the square now for a couple of years, and the last time they did it, which was a month or so ago, I can't remember the numbers, but there was basically no green space. It was full of humans, and the rocks that you can see at the back there have been carved by a collection of trained carvers and all the way to homeless people that have been living in the park. So just these opportunities to bring lots of people together to create things is having a tangible difference to this space. So back to this comment. Love is only a word that means something if we think about what's behind it. And it's not the love that you feel for your fridge or your giant truck. Sorry, Halifax, but those things are freaky. And reaching into the deep knowledge that is the Matrix series of films, there's something that you all know. If you could all just quiet, hands up if you've got a loved one. Okay, if you're sitting next to anyone who didn't just put their hands up, maybe give them a cuddle. But if you could just, as Lucy did with your awa, please hold those people in your heart while I go through these next few slides. So this idea of placemaking is something that doesn't need a definition. I'm a big fan of that, but this is a comment I put up last night from a wonderful woman called Sharon Blackie. And I think it's this kind of how we're rebuilding relationships. I'm not the first person to say this today. We're rebuilding relationships here. This is a polar bear. Thank you very much. This polar bear was in the Auckland Zoo when I was a child, and we knew it as the dancing polar bear because it would sway. And we thought it was a happy polar bear. It was dancing, wasn't it? Turns out it had a thing called zoochosis. It was in a grey, warm environment, cage. And so zoochosis is a thing that animals get when you put them in a terribly unhealthy place for them. And it means they go off their food, they stop having sex, they become terribly antisocial. And that's what was up with this polar bear. It was also green, it had mould on it. I remember it having a green bottom. So that's what happens to this polar bear when we put it in that environment. This is my daily walk to work. So in terms of me as an animal on this planet, what is this doing for my brain, my subconscious, my belief in where I belong, indeed my interventions with the humans I meet up at work then, for the rest of that day. And we all know this stuff. I don't need to tell anyone this. We're running out of time now. We seriously are running out of time. And there's a person at my work that when we get onto this conversation says, I don't really care, I'm going to be dead by then. It's like, I don't think that's an excuse to treat this planet like a rental. I think we have an opportunity and an obligation right now. And we all come from this planet. To the best of my knowledge, I'm sorry if there are any literal aliens in the room, please raise your hand and I'll take that back. But we all evolved here. In New Zealand and Aotearoa, that means the Māori people. And so we are actively, with our strategy, looking to, in a real way, acknowledge that relationship and their responsibility as kaitiaki of our land. This phrase has been really important for me in my work. Thank you again, Lucy. Ka mua ka muri. We look backwards and we learn, and then we can walk forwards. I don't know when it was we started dumping our ancestral and elder knowledge, but we kind of need it right now. And I don't need to speak to this slide because Lucy just let you right into her world, and I think you're all deeply privileged, as I have been, to have been on that journey with her. So with Lucy, we've worked on these principles and values for our placemaking team at Panuku. And the outside ones are the ones that we kind of do in a different way per site. They become a little bit mobile, but that central orange loop is the stuff that holds. And to acknowledge what Pam said, we're not getting this right now. Our kōrero has been right, our talking has been right to make these values, but we're not getting the acts right. But I can say categorically that that one is the most important one for me, and that's the one that no matter what, we still have it in our hearts, that we're trying to do this with love, for each other, for our role, for the planet, keeping going. Don't need to say that one out loud, quite white. Lucy spoke about whakapapa. These are the Callanish stones in Lewis. So these things are about 7,000 years old, or the stones are probably older. But this idea that we are connected deeply, I'm so going over time, is what was it? I got all your slides, I realised. This is something that is common across cultures all over the globe, is that we are connected deeply to the planet and beyond. And so I went on my own little whakapapa hunt to find out where I'm from. I found out my name means footpath in Scotland. That's pretty awesome, eh? Here's a bit of Scottish weather for you. Lovely. How awesome is that council logo? I want a logo with a unicorn on it too. Thank you very much. And some Scottish yarn bombing. Thank you very much. But something happened to me when I got to this place. This is Skye, West Hebrides. I suddenly understood what Lucy means when she talks about where her bones are from. I had a different experience in Skye to any other piece of land I'd ever stood on. I suddenly understood that me and the earth were somehow related. And when I left, I was like a petulant child. I did not want to go off that island. And I've been back a second time and same feeling of connection, strange feeling of wanting to burrow in and not wanting to leave. I'm misquoting Alistair McIntosh here. His book is talking about the community of Egg buying their island. It's a terrible island name. Scotland's full of egg, muck, rum, mull. There's a community that bought their island back off their laird. So this is where this quote comes from. But the book is full of deep clues about what it means to actually be connected to place. And it has a deep connection through to Nova Scotia. So when they burnt villages out of their farms in the Hebrides, some of them came to New Zealand, some of them came here. And both sets went and burnt out people in those places. And we're passing this hurt on. We're passing this hurt on. I want to know when it stops. Does anybody know what this is? Hands up if you know what this is. Thank you very much. It's one of these. This is the chemical makeup of a human being. But I'm guessing you had a more visceral response to this, or if you're me, this one, than you did the graph. So my point is, data doesn't always... I got a Jane Jacobs quote in. Data doesn't give us the whole story. In fact, as humans, it gives us virtually none of the story. We need more. There is more to us in terms of how we relate to each other and to our places. And what we do as placemakers carries deep messages to the people that we're working for, and some of them are conscious and some of them aren't. Sometimes we're doing things with the best intentions, but we are telling people that they don't belong. And so we need to be smart enough, thank you Tim for saying it, to think like sociologists and counsellors and understand how human beings are wired at a very deep level as much as we're thinking about the Instagrammable shot. We are all in this room 99.9% genetically similar. We're just under 99% genetically similar to bonobo chimps, which is what this is. We are 60% genetically similar to chickens, and we are over 50%, some say 60%, genetically similar to bananas. We have all evolved from the same planet. We've all evolved from the same stardust, if you go back far enough. So we're not that different, you and me. And like, I'm not being a hippie, we're literally from the planet. That's literally how we evolved. And we have become the dominant species. We have beaten out all the other Homo genus by being adaptable and also by being social, by being able to put these big brains together and solve things as a community. And we've got a big problem, so we need to put our brains together and solve it as a community. This is a shot of the Auckland Theatre Company production of Hair the Musical in 19-something or other, not 02. And I want to use it as another metaphor, theatre-wise, is that this is a whole group of people, right? There's armourers, there's the person who sold the tickets, there's the chap who designed the set, there's the director, the choreographer, you can pick the stage manager if you've got good eyes, there's a whole bunch of actors who are prepared to take their clothes off at the end of the first act. But the point of this slide is that it took a whole group of really different skilled people to make a show, and you don't question the other people in that company. You don't try and get the acting department fired because you need them. You certainly don't get the rigging department fired because the house curtain won't go up. So you've got to all work together for the good of the show, something I got taught really early on. We all serve the script. The script we are serving here is place. And I've got a lot of quotes here because I want you to think I'm sounding intelligent. The place that we are serving is Papatūānuku, Mother Earth, the thing we've all come from. Carl Jung said, "Rootlessness begets meaninglessness, and the lack of meaning in life is a soul sickness whose full import our age has not yet begun to comprehend." I'd suggest we are starting to comprehend it now. As much as we need in the art that is city building, to talk about moving people physically, we need to talk about moving people emotionally. We need to remember and remember our connection to our home planet. Each of us needs to build feelings of relationship with the place we are living in right now. And from Sharon Blackie again, it's the only sane way to live, to be fully present in the place where your feet actually are planted. It is also the only way to live that is deeply respectful of the earth. From Sean Kane, who's a Canadian, and his book, The Wisdom of the Myth Tellers, the Aboriginal teacher Bobby McLeod said, while walking through downtown Sydney, "With your mentality," this is to a white architect, "these tall buildings are the result of the dreams and plans of architects, engineers, and builders. But the Aboriginal also sees that the stones and bricks themselves have an inner potential, a dreaming to become a structure. We are all Indigenous to this planet, but a lot of us have forgotten what that means and how to be it. We don't need to think outside the box right now, we need to throw the box away." Ka mua ka muri. As we step further into this uncertain future, we need each other. We need new systems built on healthy, Indigenous-led, reciprocal relationships. We need aroha, love, faith and peace, tātou tātou e, for all. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Thank you, Frith. I was going to walk backwards, but I can't moonwalk. So thank you for that. I owe you a hug. That was amazing. Yeah. The next speakers I'd like to introduce are Kathy Madden and Fred Kent. They are the founders of Placemaking Fund, Placemaking X, and Project for Public Spaces, which I think was founded in 1975. They have done a profound amount for the planet, I think, by sharing their stories and images and connecting so many people around these conversations. So without any further ado, I would like to bring them up.
Oh, wow. I feel like I don't know where I am. That was just wonderful. Where are we going? This way? So Kathy and I have been partners for many years. I tend to be the more outspoken one. She tends to be the more wise one, and the insight, it gives these amazing insights. She had a stroke a few years ago, so she has a harder time talking, so, excuse me. So, anyway, I'm sorry. Get myself together. So we founded, there was a hard fork that we took, the leadership at PPS, my sons, 2 sons, and Kathy and 2 other people, and we were on the verge of doing something really profound, and but we could not have taken Project for Public Spaces there if we had stayed there. So we left, and we set up this thing, which is Placemaking X, is a global network of amazing people. We used to be we founded Placemaking, and but then it just caught on. It's not a discipline. It's just an idea that, and we're all placemakers. So the more we worked, and we saw these other people around the world coming along and doing stuff that was phenomenal, we didn't feel like we were important anymore. We felt like we could be more part of a larger network, and which we did. But the other part of this, and this I think is almost more profound, and it fits in with the discussions we've been having in this session, is about social life. And so we're looking deep into social life and the kinds of things that were being talked about here. So you've got this yin-yang, or whatever you want to call it, where you've got the global network of amazing people, but then at the foundation is this idea of social life. And that's profound, and we'll get into what that is. So we were sitting in a market in Munich, and we saw this bench, and it was the ugliest thing we probably had ever seen. And we came back that night, and those 2 pieces of wood were gone. And we said, wow, that's interesting. So we came back the next day, and they put it back out. So in the morning, whoever puts it on that piece of metal, it's between a soup place and a drink place. And it becomes the connection between the 2. And people can sit there. They don't sit very long. It's not very comfortable. But you can see where you put the bag, and you have your drink. So you need that. So it's this amazing little piece of place making. And then these women were there for a while, and they just were laughing and giggling and having their drink. And the life of that little place is woven together by that little simple bench. So placemaking is really a dynamic human function. We all do it. It's an act of liberation, of staking claim, of beautification. It's true human empowerment. Everyone is a placemaker. So Kathy and I, but mostly Kathy, wrote a book called How to Turn a Place Around. And we had these 11 principles, and I don't have time to go into all of them, but these 4 are critical. Without hesitation, this is maybe 20 years ago we wrote this, the community is the expert. You're creating a place, not just a design. You can't do it alone, and if they say it can't be done, it doesn't always work out that way. And if they say it can't be done, that's the proliferation of silos out there that all want to be part of the agenda to make our cities better. But none of them are really thinking about the social life as the core force that they need to be dealing with. So, but saying that the community is the expert was an enormous release for us. Sure, we know a lot about public spaces, but we don't know what to do in that space or this space. The people in the community do. And so we have a game, and we do something called the Power of 10 and all those things, and it's being used all over the world now. And really what it is helping people to find out who they are and what they're about and what they want to be part of. So it's not complicated, but it's revolutionary. So about a week ago, we changed our whole strategy. And we turned everything upside down. And we decided that no longer were we just doing placemaking from the ground level and all of this down here, but we were really part of the global solution to the global catastrophe. And we really began to realize that in a sense, we can get those solutions through local communities. And that's the foundation of where we need to go to save this planet. And the moment is now. This is last week, okay? So 50 years ago, I'm a community organizer, and I organized Earth Day in 1970 in New York City. And the next day, this was the picture that went around the world, and it's the biggest fake news story you've ever seen. Because no one in that picture knew it was Earth Day, because it was a beautiful sunny day, the first day of spring, and everyone came out, and then this picture went around the world. And it was sort of, the catalyst, but there were a lot of reasons why it happened, for a lot of reasons. So I'm jumping ahead because something happened about 6 years ago where we started working in Detroit. And I was asked to come and help to do a master plan for downtown Detroit. And I said, no, I will not do that. I don't believe in master plans. I think they are a waste of time. They have nothing to do with people in their communities. And I don't know why I went, but I did. And about a month into the master planning process, they agreed. And they said, well, we better do something different. So they did we did a placemaking vision with them. And these are the sites in the downtown of Detroit. Detroit had basically been evacuated. In 1917, it looked like that. And look at that statue there, Soldiers and Sailors Monument, and look at it there. That's what happened. It didn't move, it just evacuated. Everything around it left. So we did a plan, it was implemented, and then we worked with a guy on the left who owned $7 billion assets, brought most of downtown Detroit. And I called him a zealous nut, and he liked that because he was not a developer. He had no idea what he couldn't do, which is his biggest asset. And the person he worked with, a woman that we worked very closely with, so he started doing public spaces. He led the redevelopment of Detroit through the public spaces. It wasn't through development, it was through the public spaces. And everything was about programming. There was no design done, but programming is a lot about design. So this is the vision. And we released that vision in 2014. And that was what the visuals things. And we implemented it in 4 months. And it became that. And part of what we did was put a beach in the center of Detroit, and guess what? A beach is for everyone. So everyone came. And then when you put a beach and you put a beer garden and a lot of toys and playthings and stuff like that, you've got a center. That's the central of the place. And so this happened, and a skating rink, and that, and then games, and basketball. And then for all the sterile office towers, they had to put stuff out front to add humanity to it, because that was part of the problem, is all these new buildings had no sense of place. And so this was what happened. So in going back to that, that was the central area, but we worked on most of the other areas as well, programming the space with a person locally who could do phenomenal work. And that was a lot like Frith, what Frith was doing. I mean, and what they're doing here on the waterfront here. So it's this idea of programming and activation and lighter, quicker, cheaper is just so wonderful and easy and exciting because people love to be part of it and have to be part of it. It's theirs. So you get the power of 10, and there are 10 places, and these have all become something very important in, 5 years, 4 years? So in New York City, we did the same thing in places. So the idea of what this is you need to create energetic anchors of activity, make it a movable piece, get life on the streets and sidewalks, bring the inside out, and use lighter, quicker, cheaper to make things happen. And so I'm going to go into streets very quickly. If you design your community around cars and traffic, you get more cars and traffic. And this is in Sydney, Australia. And these poor women were trying to get across the street. And so they hugged each other. So we call it a public display of affection. But it was an 800-foot block, and this was in the middle of the block. When you design your community around people, you get, in places, you get more people in places. Duh. But why aren't we doing that? It's not on anyone's agenda. And Alan Jacobs, who wrote a book on streets, just a couple of things there. If you develop and design streets so they're wonderful, fulfilling places to be, you will successfully design about 1/3 of the city directly, and you'll have an immense impact on the rest. You've got that problem here. You've got this problem in the other places, Bridgewater, wherever we went. And this is one of the places we worked on first in New Haven. Pretty ugly spot, but it had some very viable, strong retail. We didn't get rid of any of the stores, but we widened the sidewalk, narrowed the lanes to 9.5 feet, and created an amazing corner, which then was right across from Yale University. And then when I was working with Holly White, I did a study of the day in the life of a wastebasket. I spent time with pickpocket detectives. But that wastebasket on the lower corner, and there's a bank right next to this on the right, and I talked to the owner of that, and I said, you must like your location. And he said, no. And I said, why? Because people start walking faster when they go by the bank, and it takes them 2 or 3 storefronts to slow down and get into a window shopping rhythm. Wow, that was amazing. And the wastebasket, that's a whole other story. The day in the life of a wastebasket, I did a film. But that's the building, that's that same block now. Nothing is going on there of any real significant value. So, and then I love this, the bollard, the little bollard in Paris. Look at that picture. The Superman is there, someone's leaning with a suitcase against the bollard. She's got her little duck with that, and he's holding on to the lamppost. And these people are standing talking at that. This is a social life of a corner, of a crosswalk. And then you get this where that's a heavily used bollard, and look at these other people, how they're using it at the corner. But you can also take those bollards and you can change the whole dynamic as you move from a fast-moving street into a neighborhood. Change entirely the dynamic, and the whole space becomes different. And you can do that. And then you can go this way with this friend of ours who died, unfortunately, but he took an intersection like this, which was a horrible place. Everything was removed back so that the evil of this intersection had such an impact on the downtown. And he turned it into this, where there are no stoplights. And the whole idea is to create eye contact between pedestrians and vehicles. And it works beautifully. And we were standing there, and a fellow from a bus opened the door and said, "Thank you, Mr. Monderman, you have made my life so much easier." And there's 27,000 vehicles going around that. Accident rates were way down. You want vehicles to behave like they're in a village, build one. And what it means is a transfer of power and responsibility from the state to the individual and community. That's really powerful. And so our guy who ran our transportation department, we took him there and we put him in a chair in the middle of the street, and he was a converted traffic engineer. He never looked at traffic the same way again. So you can create intersections, and this is a pretty heavy intersection traffic-wise, buses and cars. But as the lunchtime comes on at nighttime, and because you've designed it so you've extended the sidewalks and made the corners very much accessible, it becomes a social place. It almost becomes a square, and the impact it has on that corner is phenomenal. And this is a traffic interventionist who he can't walk on the sidewalk, so he has to go on the street. And so he does that. And then all of a sudden you get these wonderfully crazy people that come along and add color to the place, and you can sit on the bollards. And so, you know, if we had 1,000 places in the world put a bench on the corner, we actually could win the battle against the traffic engineers by doing something like that. And this is one of the great interventionists I've ever seen. I mean, just think of these beautiful green planters and put them in places where you want to do some activations. And I can't read this. You can't. I mean, you can look. There's an old paradigm and a new paradigm. And it's from mobility to accessibility, from arterials to boulevards, access, and so on. And we just don't have time. So placemaking is not a discipline. It's a community organizing. And you can read that. Aligns assets and aspirations. It's increasingly become the places where we choose to live and work. And if architecture is frozen music and urban planning is composition, placemaking is improvisational street performance. That's all of us, normal people, and what we can do to improvise, to bring value to our lives in a sense of place and importance to them. So when we started working, we really didn't have too many people that we had to persuade, and we could do experiments in our work. We worked in 3,500 communities around the world, sort of transforming. But, you know, it was such a little drop in the bucket. It couldn't go very far. We had to go much further by setting up this network. But today, we've got all of these disciplines there. They're all in silos, all very important, all extremely focused on parts of the larger equation. But you can't get through them all. It's almost impossible to get things to happen. So the lighter, quicker, cheaper becomes even more important, and the prominence and the importance of people and community becomes there. So this has been our motto for a long time. We were in a meeting in Buffalo, New York, and we were leaving the room, and someone said to me, you seem like you want to turn everything upside down. And I said, yes, to get it right side up. And then I think we were in Perth, Australia, and we came up and someone said, well, you mean to get from inadequate to extraordinary? So I think this is really the foundation for all of what we're talking about here on placemaking, is we got to turn it upside down. But by turning it upside down, we actually get to the future. There is an enormously interesting future if we do that and look at going the other side. So I think that's it. So I'm an older white man. I have two sons that are amazing, and Kathy, and oh, this is the one. Oh, this is so funny. This is just amazing. We were in Mahone Bay, and this guy, the person that has this ice cream stand, owns the restaurant on the land on both sides of this road, and he tried so hard to get an ice cream stand there, and they wouldn't let him do it unless it was portable, mobile. So guess what he did? He dug a hole, and he has to show this thing there that he can move it tomorrow if he has to. So, and then he's going to do one on the other side for his. He's going to do it for a hot dog stand, and then he's going to build a pier out into the water and put the ice cream stand there. This is placemaking at its best in the most incredibly difficult environment of a town. I don't know how to go back. Yeah, so this is the family and the daughters, and there's 9, the daughters are in 9th grade, and there are 9 of them that have 3-hour shifts for this wonderful place. So that's placemaking, right near here. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to reference Ethan and maybe Peter Gronendale, but one of the themes of the conference a couple years ago was from livable to lovable, and that really took over the conference. So thank you, Fred, for those lovable moments. Our next speaker, I'd like to introduce, you may have met him last night underneath Rich O'Coin's parachute, jumping up and down. It's Ramon Moradas. He is the Chief of Strategy for La Marina de Valencia. I can't say that right, but you can. And he's also on the board of European Ports. He's an activist and working in the field, and he's also a key member of the Placemaking Europe network, which is also getting going in Europe. So, Ramon.
So hi everyone, it's a great pleasure to be here today with you. I work for the La Marina Valencia, which is the Waterfront Development Authority in Valencia. We are not the Port Authority, we are not the City Council, we are an independent and autonomous autonomy that manage all the public side of the harbor, which is around 1 million square meters, 800 berths for boats, around 20 buildings, 100 business, a bunch of public space, and I've been there working for the last 3 years and a half, so I want to explain it, how we have been transforming the waterfront only these 3 years and a half. So it's been a really lighter, quicker, cheaper project, but I think it changed a lot, its landscape. Well, first of all, I want to introduce you a bit of Valencia. Valencia is the third city of Spain after Madrid and Barcelona, a coastal city in the east, approximately 1.5 million inhabitants. We have a really strong identity, our long language, and you probably know our best invention that has been La Paella, which is probably the only thing that we really take seriously, as Gordon Stevens really knows, but that's another story. But yeah, Valencia is the city, a really dense, Mediterranean, interesting city, but that's also Valencia. Valencia things suffered or undergone a huge transformation in the last decades. And I'd say as well that I think that Valencia has had a problem, like many other cities have had, which is a mirror problem, a problem of not recognizing itself in front of the mirror, not being able to recognize its own virtues. And that generates a bunch of mistakes. This is Valencia, huge harbor. La Valencia is the tiny K-shaped waterfront on the top of it. And what happened with Valencia is it was actually founded by the Roma 6 kilometers far away from the sea. And it grew from there, 6 kilometers far away from the sea. There was the city center, all the institutions, the municipalities, civil servants, architects, everyone was there. But from the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, there was another Valencia that was growing next to the sea. The Valencia of the maritime neighborhoods, self-built villages of fishermen, shipbuilders with a strong identity, very resilient, some villages that have survived in the last 100 years, to the bombing of the Civil War, to a big flood, to a really bad quality urban planning, and still they have their charm. But the problem, I guess, Valencia was dichotomical. On the one side, this Valencia that was next to the sea. On the other side, this Valencia, this central Valencia, was 6 kilometers far away from the sea. So from years and years, there's been big plans and projects to trying to connect the city center to the waterfront. But plans and projects like architects do, as civil servants do, that are grand scale, grand big avenues from the 19th century first plan to the beginning of the 2000 first, last plans. And actually, all this ambition, all this idea arrived to an end in the beginning of the 2000s. And in 2003, the waterfront undergone a big redevelopment process. So from going to the image in the left to the image on the right, we have 3 years and 500 million euros investments. Why did we do that? What was the reason? Theoretically, the big word was, okay, we are opening up the waterfront to the people, we are recovering it, we are creating a public space through hosting big white elephants. So in 2007, we host the America's Cup of Sailing. We basically give to the Swiss team that won the America's Cup like all this space to manage them, and it was its private business for a couple of years, but we were more ambitious, so we decided, okay, we don't have enough, we want Formula One as well, because you know, Valencia has to be known all over the planet and be put on the map. That is one of the most perverse things that politicians can say, and they say it a lot. So we had Formula One for 5 years. the Grand Prix of Europe, and this idea, these white elephant projects that were supposed to fuel the growth machine actually generate a big financial disaster. Formula One, on the one hand, cost around 500 million euros to taxpayers, directly from taxpayers, and the America Cup of Sailing generated a debt of other €500 million that it's still on the shoulders of my institution. And also we generate a bunch of space that could be recovered, what we ironically call the second deindustrialization, because we have at the waterfront those sheds on the right that are the consequence of how all harbors become obsolete for commercial trade, but we also have those sheds on the left, those buildings that were meant to be temporary to host the different teams of the America's Cup. So we got perfect examples of the first deindustrialization and the second deindustrialization. Both provide big opportunities. The only difference is those buildings on the left became obsolete instead of 100 years in just 3 years. And what happened in 2012? Valencia was hit by extremely terrible economic crisis, and the only possible futures that politicians and technicians had in mind were this kind of futures. You can find this image if you check waterfront in Google Images, and I think it shows a lot because basically it shows that you don't know where it is. It can be in Africa, it can be in Asia, it can be in any possible place. So that's the question we've been rising during those days. How is it possible that waterfronts, being one of those spaces with a stronger identity, with a strong memory, with strong possibilities, has been developed in this poor manner? But luckily enough, nothing happened, and in 2006, the mayor called me. I was in Australia working, by the way, at 4 a.m., and told me, hey, Ramon, would you like to come and work in the waterfront? He was a recently elected mayor, backed by LGBT movement, neighborhood associations, not belonging to any traditional party, and decided that I was maybe a good guy to do that. And maybe the other thing is that maybe they didn't find another one because, you know, it was an institution with 500 million euro debt, so maybe other guys weren't interested. And I just show you a picture because I want to share with you a bit of my intellectual background. So I was being very present in the city as an activist. I actually was writing and publicly advocating against the waterfront development. I didn't go there at all. I was ideologically against it. But I realized that it had a lot of possibilities, and I was very happy by invitation. So I showed this on the left is Fugazi, a punk band whom I share like the do-yourself ethics. Elinor Armstrong, the only woman that won the Economic Prize of Economics, Jane Jacobs, that you know, and John Keynes, just more or less to show which are my influence. No, but that's influence I brought this influence to my work as Chief Strategy Officer at the Waterfront. And we try to, in a broader sense, we try to take advantage of this possibility. As I said, the waterfront is 1 million square meters, a bunch of possibilities, and it was a big challenge, no? Then, only 3 years and a half, we started a placemaking transformation. And like the topic of the conference, placemaking is also about moving people. We were trying to move people in 2 ways. First of all, dragging them to the waterfront, because I promised nobody was going there. But the most important thing was emotionally moving there, trying to find this emotional reconciliation with the waterfront. And we basically what we've been trying to do in these last 3 years is bringing people to public space, reusing and reopening the different sheds and buildings that had a lot of potential, and also funding small spots, symbolic spots that we could use in a lighter, quicker shape to recover this waterfront for everyone. And that's basically based in a vision and a strategy that was a shared vision. Basically, the first year, we were just meeting with, I think I had more than 800 meetings, talking to every neighborhood association, every artist, everyone in the city was interested, and sometimes that's more important in terms of engagement than structured participation. Just show, explain, and demonstrate that you are open as an institution, and we were before really perceived as a really close institution that was doing nothing. So this shared vision that was published in 2017 was based in 2 basic things. On the one hand, the most important one, civic appropriation. Bring the waterfront back to the people from Valencia. And on the other hand, we needed money to do that. So the second goal was the economic activation, reusing the buildings that were already there to try to bring activities that add economic and social value to the city and also make those things compatible. On the one hand, the startups and the new business, and on the other hand, the traditional economy. I want to share you a story just to let you know a bit more. So this picture in the right is for a traditional fisherman that we've been having in the waterfront for a long time. But in 2017, when we were presenting the new strategy, we just shared with journalists a bunch of images, and this one of those. And then I got a call from a journalist that she's the one that is covering the waterfront, and she asked me, "Are there fishermen in the harbor?" And I obviously answered, "Of course not, we just put them for the presentation." But the thing is, I'm not blaming the journalist that she didn't know that there were fishermen in the harbor. The thing is, this image was completely hidden in the storytelling of the harbor before. So bringing those things together for us was very important. And we've been doing that through different processes. So in terms of civic appropriation, a structured and long-term a conversation to engage different collectives and neighborhoods, especially citizens from the neighborhood that they are, as I said, strong identity. They are worse than the city in any possible socioeconomic indicator. But we were integrating them, recover those ideas on those memories about the waterfront. This is a picture of a meeting that we did to collectively name the squares on the streets of the waterfront that had no name before. No? So we did this ethnographic research and also a participatory process to decide which names those squares and promenades will have. We've been carrying a bunch of co-design projects like this skate park, this basketball court that we recently opened, which is fantastic. We are teaming up with different artists like Abel Iglesias, that is the guy that did this amazing court, a bunch of art in public spaces. Bringing back music, which is very important. Valencia is the region in Europe with the highest density of musicians. So we said, okay, let's bring all the neighborhood orchestras to the waterfront. And here I have to repeat another story again. But when this band was playing, it was the first orchestra of the poorest neighborhood in the waterfront that we were offering them the possibility to go there and play for us. And I was listening to a conversation. And I was hearing that one old woman was telling to another old woman, "I'm so happy because it's the first time in 10 years that I come back to my harbor." And honestly, I almost cried, because she was saying that that was her harbor, but at the same time she was saying that she had nothing to do there because she was not interested in going, maybe in owning a boat or going to a club or drinking expensive gin and tonics. That was the only thing that could be done before. Also promoting a bunch of active uses, tree and lawn, hockey, all kinds of sports in the public space. We open a public swimming pool that's been one of the most amazing projects for free. All the kids in the neighborhood, most of them from Roma descent, they are just enjoying public space, but also the old guys that remembered how beautiful it was to swim in the public space, because it was a paradox, no? When it was still a harbor, it was perceived to be a nice public space. But as soon as it was open and redeveloped, it felt more private. So we wanted to recover those habits. We are doing also crazy things, like this crazy boat race that we did in July that was amazing, an idea of one of our employees. We screen Jaws. So those guys are just watching Jaws from the water, amazing 4D. And that's not ideas that we have as a management team. You are just open enough to say, hey, come. And we also have something that is very, very important, which is the 10 seconds rule. So every time that someone comes and say, hey, Ramon, say Vicente, my boss, what do we want to do a project in the waterfront. If in 10 seconds we don't come with a reason to say no, we have to say yes. So probably it has to be clearly illegal not to do that. And in terms of economic activations, we are basically programming, doing a bunch of debates and things like the one we are in today. We are hosting temporary uses, music festival, food festivals, and so on, and we get a bunch of money from that. And we also do long-term tenders, renting in a transparent and equal way the different buildings that we have, and also we try to create as much public value from those tenderships. So every renter that come to the waterfront to rent a building, they have to have a social innovation program, they have to have a sustainability program, they have to have an open and permeable ground floor, and with those, we are renting each of those buildings. So this will be the biggest innovation hub for cultural industries in the city, 6,000 square meters that we will open in January, and we are open up to 55,000 square meters for innovation uses. Everything with a kind of innovation sandbox philosophy with the Living Lab methodology that I will go in deep with that, but we also taking advantage that we manage in an integral way the waterfront to use it for testing all kind of social innovation, also tech innovations, and we are getting some of good impact. So we got now 2 of the main business incubators in the city. We have a vocational training school, and actually La Marina is driving. In just 3 years, we increased revenue 77%. We got 2 years of operative profits after 10 years of yearly losses. We are the second most visited public space in the city nowadays. And just to give you just a highlight, in 2015, 80% of the news were negative of the waterfront. Bad maintenance, financial crisis, nobody's answering the phone, you know how it works. And in 2019, 91% of the news has been positive. So I guess, what have you learned? Which are the 5 main learnings in just 3 years and a half of this project? First of all, placemaking matters and it works. Second of all, a civic engagement strategy is also an economic development strategy. Third of all, we apply elastic planning and a creative bureaucracy approach to build a permission framework. We know where do we want to go, but then on the road, we try to incorporate other wheels generating more value, and if we arrive later, doesn't matter. We acknowledge and maximize public value, because guys, even though we are broken, we are managing the prime real estate assets in the city. So we have to take advantage of that. And the fifth thing, I won't go in detail, but just a project for locals. And we say this, locals first, and then tourists will follow. It's a huge mistake most of the times when you think about places, especially waterfront, only for the ones that eventually will come. But we are not walking alone. We are part of a lot of international networks. I'm actually really honored to be here today. I got a click when I met TJ, so thank you, and thank you all the organizers. It's so amazing to be here in Halifax, but also it's for me very, very amazing to see to share stage, which, yeah, Fritz from Auckland, that for me was a really, really important reference, what was starting drafting the strategy, and especially Kathy and Fred. It was the work that you've been doing on waterfronts. It's been highly influential, so it's an honor to work with them as well. So we are part of the Placemaking Europe. We organized Placemaking Week in June 2019. We are doing it again in 2020. So you are all welcome to come in May 2020. We work with Placemaking X. We organized an amazing exhibition in one of the former shed with those 2 guys about the social life of great waterfronts. We just co-published a book that is Core Our City, because inclusion is a main topic for us. We basically know if we were just developing a classic innovation district with a bunch of startups and a bunch of tech companies, probably that would be as damaging for the neighborhoods that it would be just build a casino and a shopping mall. So how can we expand the positive effects of innovation to the neighborhoods? How can we do things that are meaningful for the community as well and make both compatible? Because honestly, innovation needs public space, and public space loves innovation. We are part of the new movement, as I said, of innovation districts. That's just a sentence that PPS were publishing, but I really think that new innovation districts will be more like market district of 100 years ago than financial district of 50 years ago. That means that we develop an innovation district. We have to compatibilize proximity with centrality. Assets that are important for the whole metropolitan area, for the whole region, for the whole city, for things that are good for the close-by community. And that's another big debate that we could just go through that. We are becoming world design capital in 2022. Valencia will become a world design capital, and it's based on this, the candidacy was based on designing public space, and La Marina will be the epicenter of that. And we are part also of the creative bureaucracy movement, that we are co-organizing the Creative Bureaucracy Festival next weekend in Berlin. Part of the board of the worldwide network of port cities, because we think that we really have to reshape the debate around infrastructures nowadays, that they have to serve the cities and territory and not they have to serve themselves. So we really want to be part of that. And we are kind of loving for a day Halifax. So I'd say for me, Halifax is a brother waterfront. We are kind of enjoying each other. We got for a couple of drinks. It worked okay for a night. Let's make an enduring, sustainable, respectful, and meaningful relationship for both parts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ramo. And I didn't clear this with Jen and Karash, but we have 6 copies of Our City to give to local libraries, and anyway, we haven't decided where they're going yet, but open to suggestions. Dalhousie? Okay. Or if anybody else has suggestions, there's a few copies over there just to look at, but they will be donated. This library? Okay. So, okay, I would like to call all the speakers up for a quick panel. And I would also like to invite Sophia Horwitz up if she's able or interested. All right. Thank you, everyone, for all those amazing, inspiring conversations and the projects that we can work on in the future. One speaker who was here a year or so ago really inspired us at the Carmichael lecture. And thank you to Alfred Burgesson, who's in the crowd. He happened to go to one of her lectures in Toronto recently. And I just want to show a quick clip of her interpretation of co-power. And I think, can we put that up there? Okay. So it's, Tamika Butler was here for the Carmichael lecture a few years ago, and it was absolutely incredible. I highly encourage you check her out or look her up on YouTube. Really, really great perspectives on equity and inclusion and diversity.
Community in Nova Scotia?
I would say that to develop co-power, you first have to define power and have that really hard conversation about who has power and who doesn't, and the difference over having power over people, and then like building people up to helping them realize that we all have some power, and then be willing to have a vision of what it's going to mean and end up in a completely different place. Because that's what co-powering actually is. It's like taking off that colonial mindset of empowering, and it's actually saying, like, we're going to go to this meeting, and we're going to talk to youth, or we're going to talk to community members, and this is where we think we're going to get, but we're willing to sit in power with them and realize we might end up in a different place, and that's okay. And if it's not okay, being okay explaining why it's not okay. You want this? That won't work. Here's the really technical reasons why, but still building that trust. So when you build trust and you're honest, you can co-power together.
And it's about giving them the power to lead you.
Yes, and that's hard, right? That's that piece about being an accomplice. What are you willing to risk? In the co-power situation, those who are used to having power have to relinquish some of it, or at least they have to say, we're going to reframe what power looks like. Like, I'm going to own my power, and I'm going to own that I'm, an entity that has, some government tie, and I'm going to own that I have power, but it's not the only power. It's not the most important power. It's not the leading power. The youth have power too. The community has power too. So I think it's acknowledging that.
Awesome. Thank you.
I tried to explain it a few days ago, and she just does an amazing job of it. So speaking of placemaking and moving people, and the idea of co-power and all working together, I would like to just open up the discussion. Does anyone have anything to say around what you've heard today with maybe the opportunity of the Friendship Center, how we can all imagine that in a constructive way.
All right, I'll take that since Friendship Center. I think it's really important, and I think everybody has talked and hit those points. It's about inclusion and making sure that, and I am a firm believer that community has the answers. Community has the knowledge, they have the cultural, they have the language, they have the ability. And if you listen to community, we have the answers, and you can build on those. And you can move it forward very quickly, because if it's owned by community for community, it's a much smoother transition to have them with you and moving forward than trying to push something down somebody's throat, let's be honest. It's very important to have that voice at the table. So it's, and I think by allowing all communities to come together, and having a voice at that table, it's ownership. I would be able to stand there and look and say, I see myself in that. I see my community in that. I see how we came to consensus on certain pieces and had true dialogue, and I think that's really, really important. Whatever is done for community, the new Friendship Center, for the waterfront, having that dialogue and not an afterthought is very key, because if it's an afterthought, and I'm not sure, but I think maybe somebody had said, you know, there's years of mistrust, lots of promises, broken promises, and that's very true for my community, but I think it's true for a lot of communities. For us, it's long-term, and how do we overcome those challenges, and that's relationship building.
Well, you know, what you're really talking about is that people are basically impotent. They feel they have no say in their future, and so they stay in their garages and other places, and that's not healthy.
I think this sort of questioning the mindset that you're in is a really tricky part of this job. That I think Tim said we're working on about a 5,000-year-old system at the moment. So what that person wisely said about questioning what power actually means, and it might mean different things to different people. My understanding of why we need diversity is so we get different minds. It's not about, it's more than everybody having a turn. Our country was the first country to give women the vote. The reason for that was that they recognised that huge problems with domestic abuse and alcohol abuse, and so there was no one in politics making decisions with that mindset. So, yeah, difference is good right now.
I just want to add too, I think that the important piece here is that we're talking about a future, and there's so much opportunity. We really are starting almost from scratch, as I know from my community's perspective, very much so. To be asked to come to tables and to have that opportunity to have a voice, and being able to actively say, you know what, that may not work for my community, but maybe we can try this, and actually having it heard, because quite often it's not heard, or it's heard and it's like there's a tick box and we move on. So I think that's really important.
I think we also have to recognise the capability and the capacity of communities to engage. You know, because a lot of our communities are just over-consulted, over-engaged, and there's a big expectation that everything's going to be, you know, they're going to do it in a voluntary capacity. So one of the things that we're quite active with in Auckland is ensuring that we are not only building their capacity to engage, but, you know, we're resourcing them to be at the table. You know, you can't expect something for nothing. And you just end up mining people's IP.
Sophia, do you want to?
Some questions?
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Sophia Horwitz, and I'm helping as one of the many organizers for a placemaking gathering and workshop that's happening as part of this Art of City building, and that's tomorrow. And I just wanted to take this as an opportunity to think about and ask all of you, what are the questions and conversations that we need to be in tomorrow? Yeah, for some provocation and for some action, both locally and nationally.
Maybe Fred.
Well, I think, you know, as we're really all realizing, and, you know, we've never met, and but how deeply important placemaking is as a really basic, fundamental idea. And it's not up here. It's not a developer can't say I'm doing placemaking. It's really the people that are doing the placemaking. And I think we're really all one together. And that's a paradigm shift. I mean, it's a revolution because, you know, when we operate, I showed you that list of all the disciplines that are out there. All of those need to be at the table. But where are the people at the table, and are they guiding that process? Or are they just being, is their agenda being imposed on us, the people? And I think it's more the latter, and that has to be realized. They're important ideas, but they shouldn't be driving the outcomes. They should be supporting the outcomes.
Yeah, I think I have two microphones. This one? Is it working, this one? No. This one. I'm just coming from Rotterdam, and in Rotterdam we had the yearly gathering of placemaking leaders of Europe. And it was kind of a beautiful moment. It's been a beautiful moment for the last 2 years already. I felt that was a big necessity of having a common umbrella for everyone that's trying to make cities better, and that's kind of maybe a big ambition, but I think placemaking is working quite well for different reasons. In Europe, we are facing big challenge. One of them is the rise of the far right. Also, we don't share the same language. Nationalism, you know the big problems. And we really need kind of a reconnect ourselves to try to find solutions. So I think placemaking is kind of the core of it. And in every city of Europe, we are seeing different movements that they are trying to reclaim public space and understanding its value in terms of democracy and so on. But those conversations around placemaking, they have two specific characteristics. They are really honest and really humble. Really humble in the sense that we are admitting that we don't have all the answers, so it's more about, okay, I've done that, it might be right, I fail on that, how can you help me? And it's humble as well because it brings into the table, I don't know, in the same table, no, the other day there was the vice mayor of Stockholm, and on the other side of the table was an activist for public space in one small city in Bulgaria. And actually the vice mayor of Stockholm was taking from the guy in Bulgaria and his activists. No? So this redistribution of, or maybe distribution of power and the distribution of knowledge in a different way is very important. And the third element is that every city can do it. It's not about the usual suspect. It's not about New York. It's not about Paris. It's not about Amsterdam. It's about Valencia, Halifax, Sofia, Porto, or this kind of cities, because it's not about money, it's not about having the possibility, it's super obvious, but it's not having the possibility to hire Santiago Calatrava to do a magnificent building. It's about what every one of us can do to make cities slightly better, and that's so powerful. So I don't know if I answered your question. But basically make sure that the debate stays like that, make sure that you can provide a meaningful and honest conversation that can a mayor have with a bike activist.
I think I'm going to add to that too, because I think it's really important for people to understand that when you are coming from a community that's been held back and all of a sudden you know, we have an opportunity to come forward with ideas, we want to share those. I'm probably asked, and you hit on that. I'm asked to sit on so many boards and so many panels and so many this and so many, and I still have a business to run. I still have the Friendship Center to run, and I spend a lot of time in Ottawa advocating for Indigenous peoples. But I think it's really important to recognize that having a person is not necessarily the community neither, so we have to be careful how we do that, and you really want it to be community owned. Because as soon as community sees themselves there and they see that they are a true ownership of that project or of that space, it becomes a very different beast. It then becomes an opportunity that will spread to outside of that area, because community are going to be there and be able to see themselves. So the resourcing is certainly a big piece, but the community ownership and being able to stand there and say, this is ours, and when I say ours, I'm not necessarily meaning my community, just my community, I'm talking ours, I'm talking Halifax, I'm talking all of it, because I've got to tell you, I've been to a lot of cities, and Halifax is a very beautiful city. It's very unique. We have wonderful people in this and have come from all over, and we don't celebrate that. You know, we're talking about the waterfront. You know, I know I've walked that waterfront. I do not see my community anywhere down there, and that water is very important to my community. There was a lot of activity that happened in that harbor, and there are huge placemakers within HRM that are very important to our communities, and nobody knows about it. It's not celebrated, it's not acknowledged. So I think the moment you start giving back, and I think you're absolutely right, you're talking turning something upside down and on your head. You are trying to get people to think differently, and I think I said it earlier. We have to turn everything on its head, and land ownership is very different than what we are currently doing. It's all of ours to own. It's all of ours to look after. It's all of our responsibility to make sure that 7 generations out, that my family, my ancestors, moving forward, have that space. We're not doing a very good job of that right now.
Would we take a question from the crowd? Good job. Oh,
Wow.
there is 2 in the vet. There's what? Did you see one?
3 have one question.
Okay. Go for it.
You're also connected to so many placemakers around the world, and you get so much inspiration. And I'm hearing just one of those last answers from Ramon about drawing wisdom from other places, one city pulling ideas from another. I'm just curious what the power of being connected to those other places have been for you. So, like, what's been what's like a story or the best example, the most powerful thing that you've been able to get from being connected to like a global network of placemakers?
Well, I have traveled 6 million miles, and I feel like I've got to travel another 6 million miles to find all those wonderful things that are going on. I'm never surprised. I'm always elated. I'm always rewarded. I always find something that's extraordinary about every community I've been in every place, and it's just such a thrill to be seeing and taking it in and then finding a way to get it out and get it and share it with people. So our Social Life Project is what we're going to do that with, but I encourage you all to be part of it and to share those little social life places that are so exquisitely powerful that other people can learn from, and then we'll put them through the large network that we have. So join me in the trips, Kathy and me. We can find the best quickly. Somehow our eyes are tuned into something, and she's the best of all. I don't know where she is, but she grew up in a hotel, and she ran the hotel with her father when she was 9 years old, because she could look at things and see something wrong. We go into a town, and she'll see all the things that are wrong or right. She just has that instinct because grew up in a hotel. She's a designer, and and a hotel is a place you need to have people feel welcome and want to come back. And that's the way we ought to be thinking about our communities, in the visceral way that we all described.
For us specifically, there are 3 basic reasons why it's important to engage in international networks. First of all, is basically we will notice knowledge. So I was sharing an idea that came to my mind yesterday, visiting the community oven that we saw in a park in Dartmouth. Did I pronounce well? That was fantastic, but sometimes you catch an idea, and also because we in Valencia specifically, we are really poor institution, so having a bunch of placemakers all around the globe coming and enjoying, we can offer them good food, good public space, but we could never pay them as consultants, so that's helping a lot as well. Second thing that is even more important maybe is gaining legitimacy, because for us being part of global networks, or for me being here, also makes us stronger in the city. And you can imagine the project that I explained, and seeing the project that I explained, which are the interests around it. So there are many interests, specifically in the real estate sector, that they would love to manage it. They would love if it was privatized. They would love to do their projects. They would love if we weren't that interested in maximizing public value. So it's important to get stronger towards them, because, as I said, even though we are bankrupted, we still manage the public land and we have power, but also like being legitimized and recognized by an international community is important to us. And also reshaping global debate. I briefly show the work of the worldwide network of port cities. That's a really important debate that is being shaped worldwide. Port authorities are terrible all around the globe. They just serve themselves. And cities are absorbing all the negative externalities of the international trade that maybe doesn't make sense anymore. So we want to be part of the international discussion. And last but not least, I have a public job. And I don't know, I can have the moral feeling that I don't have to work only for the government of Valencia. If I have a public job, it seems that I have to work for everyone in the world. And I don't know if my bosses or the members of the board will be that happy about that, but I really feel like that.
Yeah. That's right. Yes, you're all public. That's great. For every public.
Okay. I'll let Lucy go.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I guess for me, you know, in Auckland, and we're so far away from everybody, we look at our point of difference. So what do we have to offer others? And we held our first placemaking week in Auckland last year, and Ethan came over and Neil McEnroy, and it was interesting to see kind of how they rock and roll, but I guess at the end of the day, they were quite captivated, if that's probably the right word, by the way we do what we do in terms of kind of how we ensure that the Māori voice and face is seen in the work that we do. And so, you know, whilst we're looking for gems out there, we're also looking to polish our own.
Just to completely support what you say, Ramon, it's the legitimising, and this is going to sound really greasy, but it's sort of a daunting thing to be sitting on the same stage as Fred Kent, and acknowledging Kathy as well, because that leadership and being able to... We have a strange thing in New Zealand that we, for a long time, when I was growing up, everything from overseas was better. We had no programs in our own accent at home, no music, everything was from overseas. So it's great for the people that... What we're doing is disruptive, right? Benji said it. What we're doing as placemakers is disruptive. And so for some people, that's terrifying. And to be able to show that there are grown-ups overseas doing it is really legitimising. The flip side of that is what Lucy said, that this is a local conversation and it has to be led by the people of the place. So it's really important that we don't be getting Instagram shots from elsewhere and going, we want one of those here. That we're going, what does this place ask for first? And it's both top-down and bottom-up, right?
I was really inspired by Philomena Assad, and We Make the City in Amsterdam, and she was speaking about the need for everyone to be curious, and yeah, so I think curiosity is just a great basic tenet of placemaking. So, one more question from the crowd. I have Ayana. Is that? Yeah.
work on every street corner. Make something happen. Get people behind it, get them to do it, get them to love it, get them to then do the next level and the next level. Make a community organizer out of every single person in this community. By doing. Just keep doing. Doing something and then something else and then something else and then go to the next neighborhood and work with them. And then pretty soon you're building your whole neighborhood around whatever you come up with. And it's magic. It's deep and meaningful and important and vital and provocative. And making that happen in every single neighborhood is really about a placemaking campaign, and that's what will save the planet, if everyone naturally does it. We all are placemakers. Just assume that role, because we are, and we can do it.
There's a amazing PPS fellow, and I'm not going to remember his name, but he did a really amazing talk where he very gently said, I guess the main thing I'm worried about in our public spaces is bombs. And he referred to placemaking needing to be peacemaking. So it's not lost on me that we're really, really blessed in New Zealand. We've got a really pretty young country, and we don't deal with a lot of the stuff that the rest of the world's dealing with, but just tautoko-ing, that's the right word, what Fred just said. Little acts between people that build reciprocal relationships is what we're aiming for here. It's not the what, it's the why and the how that's important. And every time you see a little bit of light, you go through that gap. You just got to go through it. We shouldn't excuse ourselves from understanding that this is systems change we're talking about. That's a long job.
We're being asked to work in Saudi Arabia on the social life of public spaces. And guess what? That means that men and women are going to be in that space equally. And that's a paradigm shift. We've done it now, and we're going back, humanizing the cities, place governance, Saudi Arabia. That's a big change.
You wrap it up, Sophia? Yep.
Yeah, I think it's still also important to understand the systemic barriers. Like what you're bringing up is some people are more policed and aren't welcome to do all kinds of activities and feel like they can engage in the way that everyone might just feel ready to do. So what is that going to take? I feel like we have to legitimize and welcome activities and encourage this kind of work. So this, there is the bottom-up work that we all need to build capacity and support each other and remind ourselves that we can all do this. And then there's how do we actually change the structures to help all people feel welcome, to retrain police, to retrain systems, to actually think differently about these kind of activities.
Can I share a story about that? Inclusion is a never-ending path, of course, no? And it's also in our power to kind of target the specific communities, and we have a specific case in the waterfront that is the working class neighborhoods around the waterfront are where most of the Roma people is located. And actually we understood that organizing these concerts and everything nice that we were doing in La Marina, of course we were attracting business, young people and so on, but there was no teenager from the neighborhood was coming whatsoever. The only thing that they were doing were jumping into the waterfront, and we were kicking them out. So we opened the swimming pool, and we thought that it was going to be great for them, and it was great for them. But the first day, they took the lifeguard, a teenage girl that was the lifeguard, and they just throw her into the swimming pool with her mobile phone and so on. Second day, they come to her and say, we are going to rob you, so don't go out because you are going to get in troubles. So that was pretty problematic. And for 1 week also, my colleagues were saying, okay, we have to close the swimming pool, we have to charge a fee and so on. But we decided to treat them as human beings. So we went to talk to them. We also find the patriarch of the Roma community in El Cabañal, which is the neighborhood. We went to talk to them and say, okay, we are doing that for you. Can we do something? And then we engaged in a meaningful conversation and we were from that moment managing conflict as well. We were installing showers, and the showers were stolen every night. Every night we're installing more showers. But we said one thing, don't get that good away from the people only because a couple of guys are doing that. So we try to engage again in a conversation, treating them as a human being. It's true that there was a security guy next to the
to the swimming pool, but we also have been doing training to all the security guys that are working in the waterfront. It's been super important because we are training them how to behave in public space. They are dealing with citizens. They are not bouncers. So that's been very important. So first of all, I think there are three elements. First of all, treating humans as human beings. Second of all, acknowledging that we are managing conflict. So conflict will be there. And third of all, please don't surround. Please don't keep nice things away from people only because a couple of guys are misbehaving. So better talk to them and never police anyone. And I don't know, one of my favorite sentences, it's that strong communities make police obsolete. So I hope this happens eventually in the future. That's what I would love to happen.
I want to thank you all very much for everything you've had to say today. And thank you for being here. Okay. So we're going to have a 2-minute break this time, and then the Smart Cities session will be coming up. Oh, and
Jonathan, send a message.